Good afternoon, everyone. We are delivering our free webinar today from HomeCamp. The topic is called AI Literacy for Parents. We are going to talk about how to navigate AI safeguarding for children's online safety. And today we have our Professor of History and Researcher in AI, Dr. Toby Lincoln, who will be our guest speaker. Toby, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hey everybody, it's really nice to be here. So I've been an educator in universities for about 20 years. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last 2 years is pioneering the use of AI in classrooms and developing assessments using generative AI. So I'm really kind of at the forefront. Well, not at the forefront, but I'm an early adopter, if you like, of this technology.
So the webinar flow is going to go like this. We are going to have a 30 to 40-minute presentation that Dr. Toby has provided for us. Then we're going to leave some space for demos as well, so demonstrations of how AI is used. And lastly, we'll have some time for Q&A and also any further discussions we might want to do. Okay, so without further ado, I will hand over to Toby.
So generative AI has completely exploded onto the scene over the past 2.5 years. And it doesn't really matter where in the world you are. You could be in, I know many of you are probably in China, or in the UK or the US. Generative AI is really, really important. And what we're seeing is that children, certainly from, I would say, the ages of 13 and upwards, are increasingly using generative AI. There was a recent survey that was done in the United Kingdom by the National Literacy Trust, and something like 75% of secondary school children, high school children, were using AI to help them with their learning. Okay, and this we're seeing this is fairly common around the world. So AI is being used in all sorts of different ways, and what I'm going to do is just to highlight a few of the ways in which we know that AI is being used by kids, by children, and some of the potential issues with that, some of the things that we should be aware of as parents and as teachers, and also some of the positive aspects of AI. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I'll kind of show you some of the apps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use apps that are available in the United Kingdom. And so for China, the apps might be slightly different, but we know that that everything that you can get outside China, you can get in China. The Chinese have their own version. So for ChatGPT, it might be DeepSeek, etc., etc. Okay. So the first thing to note is that artificial intelligence is being used in schools. And either there will be specific apps that are being used in schools to help with teaching and learning, or in some cases, students will be allowed to use frontier models like ChatGPT, like Claude, like DeepSeek, etc. Okay. And what this means is that children have a huge array of apps, of helpers that can help them personalize their teaching and learning. And I'll show how that might work towards the end of the webinar. But there are other apps that are becoming quite popular. And one of those is virtual friends. Okay, so there are apps which effectively create characters that children can interact with. And on the one hand, these AI friends, they can give support, they can help children to navigate issues that they might be going through, such as around bullying or around relationships. Okay, they can be really helpful. But it's also very easy, as I will explain in a minute, for children to have conversations that might be considered inappropriate, right? Particularly slightly younger children, maybe kind of 12, 13, those kind of ages. There's also a longer conversation to be had around what it means to build an emotional relationship with an AI character, and whether that is going to affect how children develop relationships as they grow up, as they get older. And that is part of a broader conversation, I think, about artificial intelligence. But it's also worth noting that artificial intelligence is appearing in other applications. So outside China, AI is appearing in Instagram, it's appearing in Facebook, and it's very much linked to this, very much become part of those apps. So young people kind of use AI almost without thinking about it. It becomes second nature to them. And I think that this raises particular issues around things like image manipulation, privacy, and fairness. Right, so I'm going to move on a little bit just to some of these issues. So the first is image manipulation. It's incredibly easy to manipulate images online. In many apps, this is controlled. So in something like Instagram, this is often controlled, but in many apps, it's not. So it's very easy to edit pictures. Okay, so many photo editors already have kind of beauty filters. So apps can hide blemishes. They can take off weight. So if I wanted to use an app, I can reduce the size of my stomach, which has been growing since I was in my 30s, and I'm now into my 40s, so I can reduce the size of my stomach. All right. And what I think is really important is that putting yourself out online comes with a privacy risk. It's very easy to take a picture that is of someone that is online on some form of social media and download it and manipulate it, and I'll show you about that in a minute. And there is an issue, I think, with kind of body image and identity confusion, and this is particularly linked to the idea of beauty filters. All right, the presentations of one's best self on social media can create elements of anxiety. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of what can be done around image manipulation. Right, so I'm just going to stop sharing my PowerPoint for a minute, and I am going to share something that my friend did quite recently. So there we go. Can you see my screen now? Right, okay. So you can see me dressed in a Roman outfit or a Greek outfit. Can you see that, Jess?
Oh, yes, I can.
Brilliant. Right, okay. So this is one of the things that my friend did. So he took my face and he decided this is a completely fictional character on the other side, and he created he didn't create this background, and he created a background. This was the original. There we go. This was the. We've got the. This is So this is the original picture that my friend created, and you can see we are on the Acropolis, right? But what we can do is we can take the background away, and then we can add new backgrounds very easily. Okay, so I should be able to do this in edit if I can remember how to do this. I can blur a background. If I go back to my black background here, I can also blur a background. That changes the image. I blurred my background. Okay, all right, and there are all sorts of different effects that I can use very, very, very easily. And we can play around. And this is a completely free tool. It's quite a simple tool to use. But what this demonstrates is that, and you will see that I can save and share my image onto Google Photos, onto X, onto Facebook, okay, with this tool. So what this demonstrates is that my friend can take my face, put me in a completely fictional situation, and then he can send me that photograph, and then I can fiddle around and change this incredibly easily. Okay. Something else that is worth kind of understanding is that you can create. So here is another image here that my friend created, and what I have done is I've uploaded it into a video creation model. And I only have a free account. I haven't paid for this. If you paid for this, you could get much longer videos. And so what I've done, again, you can see my friend has taken my face. He's put me in a completely fictional situation surrounded by lots of food. And I said, I want a video of this person eating very quickly and getting fat. And it's just created a very simple video of me eating and getting fat. Okay. And this took me 1 minute to create. From going from the image to the video is 1 minute. And there are some previous videos that I created previously. This was I was trying to animate a poster to help my students and other things as well. Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is that it's incredibly easy for images to be taken from the internet, manipulated, and then shared. And it's important as parents, as educators, to be aware of that. All right, so that's one kind of issue that I think is really key. Let's go back to my PowerPoint super quickly and share this. Okay, so the second point that we have kind of come up with is the point about AI characters and virtual interactions. And there are, I think, two things to be really aware of. The first is content exposure. So the potential to access inappropriate conversations, which I will demonstrate in a minute. And then there is the confusion of the reality, where, the extent to which a child recognizes that a conversation they are having is with a real person. It kind of blurs the line, and you might think, no, it's just ridiculous. It's obvious that the conversation isn't with a real person, but actually we're so used these days to having conversations via our phones, over the internet, that some interactions with chatbots, it's easy to forget that the conversation isn't a real person. And this leads to bonds to emotional attachment, right? And the fact that children will form bonds with AI companions, and not just children. We know that this is something that is happening with adults as well. And there are potential benefits, real potential benefits to that, I think. AI chatbots can help with issues of loneliness for any age. They can help with confidence building, and they can help people of any age to address issues. But there are also problems with some of these platforms, and I'm just going to demonstrate one very, very quickly. So I'm going to demonstrate one that I have used a little bit, called Character AI. So Character AI is just one of many of these kind of platforms, all right? But Character AI has been criticized a little bit. So firstly, so Character AI works, what it has is it has, if I go to the beginning page, it has a list of characters that are created by users that you can have conversations with. All right, and it's very easy to create your own character. You simply click on create character, and you can give it a character name, a short description, a description of how their character would describe themselves, a greeting, and then you have you can make it public, you can make it private. So it's super easy to create. But you can also search for characters. So we just search for Mao Zedong. I could search for, I don't know, Napoleon. There we go. I'm pretty sure that it's got, so there we go. So I can have conversation with Napoleon Bonaparte, and we can see that more than one person has created Napoleon Bonaparte's, right? And some of these conversations will be really historical, so it's really good if you wanted to imagine, to kind of if you're researching Napoleon Bonaparte, it's really incredibly useful. Okay, but some of these characters that have been created are problematic, I think. So if we search, for example, for stepsister, and I'm not going to start any of these conversations, but you can see just from the descriptions of stepsister that you might not want a younger child to have a conversation with a stepsister that's described as hot, caring, pretty, cute, and wholesome. Okay, again, there might be problems about having conversations with a stepsister that's described as mean, or here as sadistic. Okay, and we can keep on going down, and we can see there are literally hundreds of stepsisters that have been created on this particular kind of app. And again, if we search for stepfather, for example, and again we can see, where isn't it? Stepfather, let's just, there we go. Let me do the one at the top instead, that might help. Stepfather, there we go. So we have, what is a red flag stepfather? I'm not entirely sure. Okay, there are potential issues that this kind of throws up. Okay, so Character AI, on the one hand, is an incredibly powerful way to discover potentially interacting with something like a historical figure. You could interact, I'm sure we could interact with Ronaldo. I'm pretty sure that Ronaldo, there we go. So we could interact with the footballer Cristiano Ronaldo. Okay, all right, and that is actually not even in English. If we wanted to practice out, I assume that's Spanish. Okay, you can have conversations that go into in different languages with something like Character AI. But there is a flip side to this, and that is the potential to have inappropriate conversations, or to be very much to become very emotionally attached to these chatbots. So in addition to that, one of the key things which I think almost everybody know about is the point about misinformation. Okay, so so AI generated content is very difficult to distinguish from human generated content. And this is particularly important in education, especially as you get up into kind of the age of 16 and above, and certainly at university. how do we understand whether an essay has been produced using AI, whether it has not been produced using AI, and that could go for podcasts or presentations and all sorts of things. And that's something that schools and universities are grappling with. How do we redesign education to incorporate the use of AI in an ethical and responsible manner? And that program is going to be ongoing, and AI is developing so quickly that is a real challenge, I think, for educators, but also for parents as well, who are obviously involved in their children's education. However, that challenge also brings an opportunity, and that is the opportunity to develop those skills of critical thinking and critical evaluation. And used properly, artificial intelligence can really help with that, because it can help students, young people and students, to question the information that they are looking at, right? And it's relatively easy to design applications that allow us to do that. It's relatively easy to design content and games and activities in the classroom that allow us to do that. All right, and and I think governments are catching up with this. So I know in China there are developing laws and regulations around content labeling. This is particularly the case for some images that have to have a little label at the bottom that says kind of made with AI. But I also know that it's perfectly possible to take an image which has a label and then put it into an AI editor and remove that label. Okay, so there are issues with the guidelines. It's possible to circumvent some of those guidelines. And this is something that we have to be aware of, right? Because AI is out there in the world. People, governments, companies, etc., are producing information using artificial intelligence, and some of this will be problematic. Some of this will be misinformation, just as we've had misinformation being produced for centuries. So up to now, I've focused on some of the challenges that I think AI brings us, and particularly some of the safeguarding things that we should be aware of. But AI also brings us many positive applications. Okay, AI is fantastic for language learning. All right, and this is where I think educators in schools have an issue. AI is very good for helping with pronunciation, the AIs that you can talk to. It's very good for fixing grammar issues, okay? Whether that's you're dealing with a long essay, a long piece of work, and you're putting it into an AI and you're asking it to fix grammar issues, or whether you're developing games and activities to improve people's grammar. And of course, AI works multilingually, so it will work for me when I'm practicing my Chinese, just as it will work for one of your children if they're practicing their English or their Spanish or their German or whatever it happens to be. AI is great at historical explanation, so that's what I've been using it a lot for over the last 2 to 3 years, is thinking about how it can help students to imagine the past. I always say to students that you have to have a little bit of imagination to be a good historian. Okay, and also AI is fantastic for cultural exposure. It can introduce people to ideas and traditions from around the world very easily, always taking into account the possibility for misinformation, for bias, that kind of stuff. And I think we are only just beginning to explore how AI can help with accessibility in education. Okay, there's been a huge drive to improve education, to make it more accessible for students with a range of neurodivergent issues and a range of other issues. And I think we are just at the very beginning of understanding how AI will change education and improve education for these groups of people. So I'm just going to demonstrate very, very quickly how you might want to use something like ChatGPT to help with education and learning. Okay, so I'm using ChatGPT 4.0. It should be fairly accessible. And so let's just put our prompt in. So I want you to create. So one thing you can do is kind of act as a teacher. If you give your AI a role, it really helps. Act as a teacher of English to Chinese students in ages of 14 to 16. Create a grammar game that tests use of the past tense. Set the game in the Star Wars universe. Okay, so that's just very simple, a very simple prompt, and let's see what the response is. Okay, so game title: The Past Strikes Back. Objectives. So it gives us an objectives. Okay, so this is it's creating a game now for a class. Right, okay, so it thinks that I'm going to do this in class. Okay, so this would work, but we want this one-to-one, and you can see how it spits out an awful lot of stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to let it finish, and then I'm going to change what I want it to do. That's great. Let's make this one-to-one game and design it around scenario building. You don't even have to spell correctly scenario building. You can make spelling mistakes, it's fine, it'll still pick it up. Scenario building. I want to play game as the student. Character scenario based with some posters. So we'll build the story. So here we go. We must escape the planet. Okay, so it's building a story here. So it's asking us to continue a story. All right, so what did you do when you were training in the Jedi Temple on the planet Lothal when a droid ran in with the message stormtroopers have landed nearby? What did you do when you first heard the news? So as the student, you'd have to write, I run towards the temple door. Right, so hopefully it will fix my grammar now. I run is the present tense. Try I ran towards the temple, the door. Okay, all right. So it's corrected my grammar, and it's continuing to play this game. So we'll just do one more round. You remember there was a secret speeder bike hidden behind the training hall. Time was running out. What did you do next? I get on the bike, but falls over because it was broken. So I've just changed the two tenses. We've got two present tense and a past tense there. But the false needs a little more grammar. I get on the bike, it falls over. In the past tense, I got on the bike, but it fell over because it was broken. Okay, right. So I just made that game up on the spot. I didn't think about this before. It took me about 2 minutes to make the game up, get it working, and you can see how for a student who's super interested in Star Wars, this would teach the past tense. Okay, and we can make this more complicated. We can make it simpler. We can change the dynamics of the game as we go through. So I could say, now I want you to set this in the Tolkien universe, in Lord of the Rings, and we could do it like that. There are all sorts of different ways in which we can use AI. So what do we need to think of as parents and as educators? And there's lots of things. The first thing to do is to just be aware of what your children are using. Okay, and that I think is good practice for any internet, for any social media use, and you will know best how to do that with your children. Talk about the world that they are interacting with online, okay, and talk about it regularly and openly, particularly with older children. By the time they hit kind of 14, 15, 16, they are going to be exposed to AI through their friends, through their teachers, through other media. Okay, it's becoming ubiquitous. It's not possible to avoid it. Developing critical thinking is absolutely fundamental. This is something that will be happening in school anyway. Okay, but teaching not just children but adults to question, to verify information, to think, to reflect on how they are using this technology and the effect that it's having on them. That's something that I think is really, really important. And then I think particularly relevant perhaps for younger children is to set clear rules around AI tool usage, and that might be something that you do in conversation with a school, particularly around homework and around how AI is used in education. Because the last thing you want to do, I think, is to, for example, allow children, particularly younger children, to use lots of AI and be really creative with it, and then find out that the school doesn't want you to do that because it conflicts with something that they are doing at school. So I would encourage you also to potentially have conversations with teachers around AI usage if you're going to use it a lot. And then talk to other parents. Okay, all right. That I think is really kind of key is to talk to each other, and also when you use AI yourselves is to use, firstly, if you're not using AI yourselves, go and use AI, go and understand what it can do, okay, and model responsible behavior for your children. Okay, sit there with your children, sit there with people and kind of use it and understand it. As educators, what we have to do is we have to teach digital literacy, and this is something that will become increasingly common. And I know that governments in China, government in Beijing, in Shanghai, I know are already ensuring that teachers have to integrate ethical AI into the curriculum. And of course, there is a conversation then for policymakers. And a conversation for regulators and companies to think about age-appropriate tools and age-appropriate legislation. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I will happily answer any questions that you have. I really hope that has been clear. I appreciate there's quite a lot, particularly for those of you who don't know very much about AI. There's an awful lot in these slides. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand over to Jess. Thank you very much.
Great. Wow. Thank you so much, Toby. That was really, really like a whirlwind stop about how AI use is looking like these days, and also the importance of, monitoring and keeping up to date about these things. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most from your talk was definitely the importance of open dialogue. So even though you might feel like, oh, there's too much technology, I don't really have the time or the energy to try and understand everything, it's really important if you have children, or if you are a teacher of children who will be using these tools and also online platforms. I remember back in when I was a child, I was on a lot of, these online game platforms. For example, I don't know if you've heard of Neopets or Club Penguin, these big open worlds that are online, but kids go on there to play games. And yeah, you don't really know who's on there because you can't tell if it is actually a similar 13-year-old or someone else. So the importance of open dialogue about what the online virtual world looks like has always been really important, not just these days, but perhaps even more important now that we have such advanced AI technologies. We do have a lot of questions in the Q&A already. I don't know if you can see them. Yep. Would you like to choose which one you'd like to answer first?
The first question about recommendations for kids, I think it depends on how old your child is. So I think if your child is kind of 15 or 16, I would be tempted just to let them use one of the main foundation models, so ChatGPT or Gemini or DeepSeek or something like that with some supervision. If your child is younger, then there will be tools out there, and the tools in China will be different from the tools that are here. I don't have a huge amount of knowledge of tools for kind of younger children, because my use and as an educator has been with 16 up, but particularly with university students. And I've just used, and they are all using ChatGPT and Gemini and Perplexity and everything else. Okay, but I'd be happy to, if you get in touch with HomeCamp, then perhaps we can have a little bit of a chat about what it is that you're looking for, and we can perhaps help you a little bit. I think we've got two questions about kind of AI filters and about talking about digital self-image. So I think that conversation has been around for quite some time. And AI, I think, has simply added to that conversation, because the thing about digital self-images is people have been kind of curating their photos for a long time, and now they're just doing it with AI. And Jess, you might have a better sense of that than me, because of some of your AI usages. Using Instagram stuff is not something that I've been doing, and I think there are different conversations. So I would say I think there are slightly different conversations to be had depending on whether your child is a boy or a girl. Okay, because I think that the presentation of one's image online and how that is received and discussed is somewhat different if you're a boy or a girl. So for a girl, I think that you would have to have a conversation about how men are likely to view that image, and conversations about sexism that I don't think you would necessarily have to have with a boy when it comes to the idea of kind of beautification. But Jess, do you have anything to add in answer to that specific question?
Yeah, of course. Like you said, using filters and sort of manipulating images has been a very long time coming. Ever since the dawn of social media, I would say. People want to curate a certain look to their life, and AI really does expedite that, actually. It's much easier to do it. I would say that this is not really as much as a conversation about AI as it is, like you say, about self-esteem and also self-perception. So this is an ongoing conversation. It's not something that only occurred because of the dawn of AI editing tools. Yeah, I think it's a very important conversation to have. And I think, how do you talk to them about this use without sounding critical? The first thing is to kind of get from where they're coming from. So why is it they want to do this? Where are they posting these images? Is it from an internal need to be creative, or is it to compete, let's say compete with other teenagers of the same age? I think once you have an open conversation about that, it will become a lot easier to understand where your child is coming from, but also how you can support them to feel more confident and to feel maybe more embracing of their natural beauty, natural image.
I'd agree with that. It's about confidence and self-esteem, and that I think is the case for both boys and girls. Is there a simple way to check if an app uses AI or not? No. That is the very simple answer to that. So with images, yes, there is, because AI tends to get things wrong. Most people who are producing AI images are probably not doing it very effectively. Okay, so you could probably tell, that my friend had put my head on a body that wasn't my body. Okay, the skin tone changed a little bit, and it was fairly obvious that the body was kind of more muscular than was necessary, than really fitted the head. But my friend uses AI images pretty well. He's pretty good at using AI. Most people aren't as good as him. So for most people, especially if they're using kind of free apps, they're not using more professional AI editing software. It is still relatively easy to tell. Okay, fingers are a thing. AI has a problem with fingers. All right, so it produces too many fingers, or if you have a hand that won't work quite, a fist that won't work properly, and things like that. When it comes to more sophisticated production of AI images, it's becoming incredibly difficult to tell, and that is concerning. And the only thing really is to have conversations with children about how they verify their information. So if they see something on TikTok or Douyin or something like that, right, then it's very difficult to verify where that information comes from. If they see something on the New York Times or Rimingirabao, okay, it's much easier to verify where that information has come from because it comes from a journalist. Okay, so that is the one thing that I would say, and that also goes to the point about homework. It is not possible for a teacher to verify whether a student has used AI in their homework if they do it well. If they do it badly, it should be relatively easy for a teacher, especially a teacher who knows that their students quite well, knows how they write, knows how they think. It should still be relatively easy. But I always say to my colleagues, if you give me a 2,000-word essay in, say, English literature or media, and you give me, or business, and you give me half a day, I will produce an essay that you will not know has been written with the help of AI. But that's because I've been using it for 2.5 years. Most people are still not at that level.
I'll just flesh out the question a bit more. Do you think they should use it? You said in your talk earlier that for older children, 16 plus, you're allowed to use it, right? But in an ethical way and not in a plagiarism way, to not use it for plagiarism. But should we encourage that for children?
So any child who goes to any university in the UK will be allowed to use artificial intelligence. They are in. I haven't seen a university that is not allowing them to do that. But as far as I know, that's the same in the US and many other countries. And partly it's because you can't stop people using it, and partly it's because it's about employability, right? So university students will have to go and get a job, and and AI is being used increasingly in the workplace. And so I would take the university experience and I would take it down to around the age of 16. And I would say that I think it is a necessary part of preparing young people for the world that they are AI literate. How that is done will vary according to schools, will vary according to individual families, okay? And where you start having those conversations around, I think conversations with younger children should be around safety and safeguarding, and just kind of playing around, having a little bit of fun with it. And then you kind of increase the complexity of those conversations as children get older. But I think that there's a question here about, should I use AI to help my children finish their homework? Well, you can use AI to look stuff up yourself, right? If your child has a particularly difficult maths problem that you don't really know how to answer, AI is not great at maths, so make sure it doesn't get it wrong, okay? But if you use AI to do something, then your child might start doing them. And so I think that there needs to be I think that if you're going to use AI a little bit, it's not a problem to help children with their homework. I think if you're going to start using AI kind of almost every day, and your child is about 12 or 13, I would have a conversation with the teacher at that point around what the expectation of the school is around AI. And schools should have policies, and indeed they will be required to have policies, certainly in the European Union because of the EU AI Act, and they will be required to have policies according to the national curriculum will require schools to have policies around AI usage. So I think that, yeah, for older children, supervised kind of learning, either at university, school, and at home. For younger children, it should be a conversation between you, the parent, what the school's policies are, and you make that decision as to how much of the door to open. But once you open the door, that door is open. It will never be closed, because AI is so useful and it's so easy, and it's so much of it is free.
Yeah.
And I don't really see that changing. There will obviously be, paid versions of things and that kind of stuff, but the free stuff gets you 80% of what most people want to do. You don't need to pay $200 for ChatGPT, whatever it is, because most people aren't going to use AI to do that kind of stuff. And there's so many different free tools out there at the moment, and I don't see that changing. So that's always been my slight kind of issue. What's the best way to set boundaries around AI-powered apps at home, especially when my child says everyone else is using it? Well, I would say that question is about any usage of any type of technology, right? Okay, and what I would do there is I would have a conversation that kind of gives your child something that they can kind of take back to their friends. So you say, AI is really cool because it does this kind of stuff, but AI is really problematic because it does that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so look for examples of where AI has made mistakes, where it's done something funny. Okay, so that you give your child something that they can take to their friends, and they can say, well, I had a chat with my mom and my dad, and we saw AI was really cool because we did this kind of thing, but then AI was kind of a bit scary or a bit weird because it did that kind of thing. And there's plenty of examples of that online. There's examples of there was an example last year where a man was chatting to AI, somebody who really knows how to use AI, and it tried to persuade him to leave his wife. So that might obviously isn't going to be relevant for conversations with children, but it's just an example of some of the things that can happen. And of course, again, we can help with specific questions, and again, it just depends on how much AI your child and all their friends are using, which apps they're using, that kind of stuff. So often these questions are quite specific to individual situations.
Yeah, adding on to that, I guess, you do hear a lot of children, they do say that, what is the point of doing tests? What is the point of doing my exams when I'm going to use ChatGPT, maybe ChatGPT 8.0 one day? So there's no need, right? What's the point of school?
Well, the point of school is to learn stuff and develop your skills. So, if we get to ChatGPT 8, I suspect that will be the least of our problems. So there are some very deep conversations that can be had around what artificial general intelligence might look like, but that's a slightly different conversation to be had, and it comes with its own issues. I think at the moment, AI is better if you are already an expert. That's why I'm better than any of my students. Okay, because I'm the historian, I'm the expert, and so I can think about how to use AI. I can relate, I can engage with it on a much deeper level when discussing historical topics. It's why I can see when my student has used AI to help them with an essay, because I'm the expert. Right, and that would be the same if you were a computer programmer. That would be the same if you were producing some types of artwork or film or that kind of stuff. So developing those skills is super important, and that a lot of that happens within school. Also, AI can enhance learning. Okay, so learning is fun. It can be really interesting. Okay, so that's what I would do. How do you explain to a younger child what AI is without making it too scary? That's a very difficult question. I would simply introduce AI to your child. So okay, so my child is under the age of 10. My son is under the age of 10, and we use AI to play simple games. So you know, when he goes through his Spider-Man phase, we use it to play Spider-Man games. He's in a Minecraft phase at the moment, just like everybody else. So we'll do it to play simple Minecraft games. And it's just, I don't really explain what AI is. I simply say, we're talking to the computer, but he's learning about Google at school, right? Okay, so as he learns, then I will introduce AI, will make it a bit more complex. He knows about something else called perplexity because I asked, but he knows that it's a way to get knowledge, right? So I just introduce it bit by bit. Because he's so young, I don't use AI very much with him. Because again, once I open that door, it'll be, Daddy, I don't want to do my homework. Can you just ask AI to do it for me, please? I don't want to do it. And then, you know, it's already difficult enough to get a younger child to do homework, right? Or any child to do homework without introducing them to AI. So I wouldn't worry. Should you take courses? Yes, if you want to, yes, of course. And we can recommend stuff. There's all sorts of things out there.
Yeah, that kind of links with the last question, which perfectly ties up the session, which is, what age do you think children should be getting access to, you know, AI, to using
AI? It depends on the child, right? So most social media apps will have a no younger than 13. And there is, I think the question is what children should have unsupervised access to AI. And I would say 16. Okay, under 16, I think you need to know what your kids are doing with AI. Over 16, it becomes almost impossible anyway, because 16-year-olds are, you know, they want to be adults. So even many of them. And by that time, I would hope that by the time that children reach the age of 16, I would hope that they know enough about the online world to make their own choices. And I think the important thing is then to continue to have those conversations. But under the age of 16, I think access should be supervised. It shouldn't be, they shouldn't be have ChatGPT on their phones. It should be, you know, you should be able to because there are no age limits to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware. I mean, I don't want to say something and then OpenAI kind of come and say, actually there are. AI is aligned, so the chatbots will, there are things that they won't do. So you can't have a conversation with ChatGPT about how to lose weight really quickly and become anorexic, for example. It won't let you do that. So in that way, it's much better than some of the online platforms like TikTok, where you can very quickly start to get into content that is harmful. So in some ways, the way that all of the major platforms have been aligned means that it's actually quite difficult to have some of those conversations. But then you have platforms like character.ai where it is a bit easier to do to have conversations that you wouldn't want, say, a 12-year-old to have. So it's about supervised and unsupervised AI usage. That is how I would answer that final question.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor. And we're perfectly at the close, so I'm just going to take some time to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. I hope this session answered some of the questions you might have, or it might have even sparked some ideas. If you do have any concerns or further questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. You can email us. And I think in a one-sentence summary of today's sessions based on the Q&A, it would be that AI is a very new tool It's very advanced. It's kind of different from everything we've encountered before. However, it is still a tool for us to use. And so it goes like other tools as well. For example, like Professor said, social media like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, there are age limitations, and we should treat AI kind of like how we already treat those platforms, with development stages in mind, so how children develop and their understanding, but also to monitor that progress. So to never just say, no, you can't have access, but to make sure that they are having access at a suitable age and are in a mindset where they understand what they're getting into. Yes, so thank you so much, everybody. And we're spot on 1 o'clock, so we'll let everyone go to lunch now. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.